dreamer? It is said that to best enjoy the light, you must first explore the heart and soul of the darkness. We are the artists who create in the shadows, whose dreams are designed to become your reality. I'm Stanley Wiater. Welcome to my world of the dark fantastic. Welcome to the world of dark dreamers. Are you a dark dreamer? Producer Charles Band indisputably is. Son of veteran filmmaker Albert Band and the brother of acclaimed composer Richard Band, Charles is also the head of his own kingdom, otherwise known as the Full Moon Universe. The producer of literally hundreds of motion pictures, Band is the creative spark of such highly successful series as the Puppet Master films and the subspecies vampire films. The amazingly versatile and prolific Band produced his first feature at the ripe old age of 21. He also produced and directed the 3D sci-fi thriller Parasite, which featured effects by a then unknown Stan Winston. Charlie Band recently invited us to visit his Full Moon Universe headquarters in Los Angeles, where we discussed the joys and frustrations of a lifelong commitment to the dark side of the arts. Charlie, why do you work so damn hard?
Well, you grow up really loving the genre. I mean, if you grow up loving this genre, you can understand. It's a good question. I guess I'm to some degree a workaholic. I do take weekends off. I usually don't work on a weekend, so I'm not that insane. But, it's tough when you do something that you love doing, in a sense, something that is, sort of starts as a hobby or a passion. And if you turn it into a business, the lines are really blurry. So, one of the things I enjoy most on the weekend is creating new ideas or images or premises. And, some people would say, well, you're kind of bringing work home. Well, that's fun. That's just a total fun, enjoyable hour if I create stuff. This business is a tremendous mix of work, unpleasant work and pleasant work, and there's pleasure involved. So when you're in a mode of your business hat is on and you're trying to, make sure people get paid and covering checks and collecting money, that's unfortunately a large part of the day. I kid around. People say, well, what do you guys do in sort of the filmmaking process? And I say, well, we're involved from concept to collection, and it's actually the truth, because the concepts, for the most part, come from me, and these projects sort of are given life, and other people get involved in the process of making them. And then we cause the marketing to be created, and we cause distribution. And at the end of the day, you need your money, to make the next movie. I've directed, over the years, maybe an average of one film every year, maybe not even that much, maybe one film every 18 months. And then it's different. Then I'm wearing a different sort of hat. It's demanding because when you're directing, you really have to stay focused, and these are very short shoots. We don't have the luxury of shooting for months. So, you're trying to stay focused, but then again, you're on a cell phone dealing with the office and trying to deal with all the other stuff that you are responsible for. Then you feel like you're cheating the company because you're, the indulgence of directing a movie. Then when I'm not directing, I feel jealous of all these guys who are coming in and doing what I really wanted to do, because, you start off just wanting to make movies, such an innocent sort of, aspiration, and then you wind up becoming sort of a bureaucrat chained to your desk and occasionally doing interviews and stuff. So. But not to say it's all so depressing. There are moments when you hear from fans, you get encouraging emails. You read along with the bad reviews, some good reviews too, and that's always frustrating in a way, because we're sometimes compared, our little movies, to pictures that cost 100, 200, 300 times the budget. And again, it's not an even playing field. When you make a little movie and you're on the video store shelf next to the same genre film that cost $150 million. The same discipline is there whether I'm directing, producing, or sort of being on top of things from afar. It would be really wrong of me to go out there and spend more money and more time than the other directors who work for me. That would be definitely not a good thing. So no, if it's a 12-day shoot, you like any director, you try to make do with those 12 days or those 8 days or whatever it is. And I've done shows. Some directors can say, I've directed a movie in a day. Well, that's That's amazing. But I have directed a picture, I think the quickest is in 5 days, and I don't think I've taken more than 18 days. So, I mean, I haven't really spoiled myself here, but directing a picture in a short period of time is a challenge, and it starts with the script. The script has to be manageable. You can't write yourself into doom. You have to be able to create something interesting and characters that are interesting in a few environments, because you don't want to do 1,000 location moves. And you have to be sort of clever with your footwork. It's not anything more than that. It's being a good planner, because it really boils down to the planning involved. One of the pictures I directed was the first Trancers film with Tim Thomerson and Helen Hunt, and that actually had quite a few locations, and I think we only had 10 or 11 days to shoot it in, and it was a more demanding film. It wasn't like a haunted house, one location. We moved around town, but the thing was well planned. It was beautifully written, and of course working with Tim and Helen was great. And you just got to know when you have it. You set it up. You have to. I mean, I cover things very traditionally. I'm not into spending a lot of time moving the camera around, because if you have to sacrifice anything, it's that sort of indulgent, fancy shot. Better you get coverage, so an editor knows how to move the film around than lock yourself into one elaborate shot, which sometimes can't be cut, or winds up being taken out of the movie, or worse yet, you have to live with it, even though somebody blinks or somebody does something worse or flubs a line. If you get something you like in the first or second take, you got to move on. You don't have the luxury of time or film, because what a lot of people don't realize is, with few exceptions, most of our pictures are shot on 35 millimeter, and it's very expensive. Every foot is like a buck, like just whizzing through that camera, and you don't want to. You can't say, okay, take 27. You just can't do that,
Since you have the power of final cut, doesn't that give you a lot of confidence when you're making a film?
Not at all. Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, okay, so there's a few things we're spoiled with. We're spoiled with being sort of the masters of our own fate. And I know, because I have good friends who make mainstream films, and I know the frustration's there, waiting forever for a project to get off the ground. Last-minute changes in studio regimes and projects fall apart, politics, bureaucracy. But then again, when they finally get going, they've got every tool known to man, to make their movie, and they have a lot of money to play with. We, on the other hand, run quick, have to, just do everything on a shoestring, sacrifice. I mean, at the end of the day, whatever the idea was, it gets like whittled down to a little kernel, and you just try to hope that kernel doesn't get crushed. But having said all that, once you're on the set and you're involved in the process, you don't have people coming and saying, I want this, I want that, and redo this, and I don't like this actor. You couldn't afford that anyway. And then the idea of having sort of not just final cut, but final say on marketing is also, a good thing.
Could you take us step by step through the process of making a full moon production?
It really starts with a concept, a visual usually, along with a title that I know has enough magic going for it that it will first be picked up by the few buyers who control all of our destiny. I mean, if Blockbuster or Hollywood, which is 2/3 of our business in the United States and Canada, don't put our pictures on their shelves, we're in trouble. So you want to have something that doesn't turn them off, but that ultimately appeals to the fan. And our little window, as it relates to direct-to-video, is in fact the front of that little VHS box or the DVD box. So it's got to be something compelling enough. I mean, there's a lot of criteria, and of course we don't hit it every time, but it's got to be compelling, it's got to be intriguing, it's got to be something that doesn't look like a B or C movie. I mean, a B movie is not a bad thing anymore, but if it looks something cheap, a lot of people are not going to rent it, and we succeed if these pictures rent well. And then to some degree, how we do with foreign and television. So there's got to be, again, I have a certain philosophy. I mean, I've never made a slasher movie. There's certain films in the genre that I've stayed away from. So it's got to promise, it's got to be relatively clever, and it's got to have again, just on the surface, a premise that is intriguing and doesn't look too derivative or repetitive, even though there's only a few stories, I guess, that one can tell Then, of course, you have to deliver the goods. Then you have to make, either fortunately or unfortunately, you got to make the movie. And then you do the best you can. I've worked with some great directors. I've given first sort of chance to a lot of people who've made, gone on to have pretty amazing careers. You want to choose wisely. You have to make sure the script is decent, and also, that the script can be done within a certain budget and timeline. Early on, we used to do it sort of the other way. We would get writers who were, for the most part, very talented, and we'd say, just write your script, okay? They would write, Armageddon. It was like massive, impossible script. And then we just figured, well, then we'll whittle it down. And we spent more time whittling, but then, sometimes that first pass is the most sort of magic, and then by the time a script is like cut and pasted and whittled, it loses what it had. And now it's more like, look, what we can really afford is 3 environments. Let's make the main environment a college or this or that. And you sort of give the framework of the location. And, we can't have 40 speaking parts. Maybe we can have 4 or 5 leads and some peripheral characters. So there's a certain matrix that, and again, we've worked with writers now who in some cases have done 20, 25 scripts for us. So they sort of know the deal. Some of the pictures that I've made that have done real well were films that were made during a time when we had a little more money to make the pictures. Again, the canvas was a little broader. And the pity of it is as you get smaller and try to make these pictures, again, within a budget range that you can then go and make a few dollars and keep staying in business, there's a point where if they get too small and too thin, you really aren't making a very rewarding, form of entertainment. So the challenge is greater than it's ever been, and with all the tricks that we know and having done this for a long time, it gets tougher as the world keeps shrinking.
Now, Puppet Master, how did that originate? Was that simply you had the idea for the title and the poster?
That was, again, one of those sort of head of the family, middle of the night inspired ideas. It only started with a poster. I had no idea what the story would be. I just knew that Puppet Master was a great title, and I had that title sort of in my book for a while. And the basic idea was some evil sort of guy, the Puppet Master, having these sort of super villain little nasty puppets. And what I did is I sketched out sort of the different attributes of these little puppets. I came up with half a dozen ideas. And then I called a fellow named Lee McLeod, who's done a huge portion of our art, all of our illustrative art that you look around and see. Recently we've done a lot more photographic, computer-generated art. But there's I would say 80% of all of our art is really from the hand of one guy, a guy named Lee McLeod. And of course we come up with concept sketches, we create the characters, but in the final analysis he puts it into that kind of special format which people recognize as sort of our signature artwork. But I went to Lee and he's done a lot of concept sketching for me. I said, Lee, I just need a black and white little poster on this thing called Puppet Master. Let me describe some of these puppets. I want this guy with 6 arms, and we sort of talked through the piece. And I got the piece days later. I looked at it, I thought, this is like video gold. When you look at something that works, you just know this is a good thing. And I actually walked into Paramount. That was the time when I began a relationship with Paramount. They did all the distribution for our video label for 5 years. And my first meeting, I brought in this piece of art, and they were very intrigued. And I said, listen, I'm making this picture, and this may be the right film to begin our relationship with. It'll be the first film under the Full Moon banner. And that actually started the deal at Paramount. And that was a very successful release, foreign and domestic. Again, in relation to a small direct-to-video movie.
And how did your toy line come about?
For a while, up to recently, and this year has sort of, put the kibosh on a lot of different things, we were doing well for about 4 years with our own action figure line. It was not a complicated premise, because the characters in these movies, especially the Puppet Master films, were well liked. And again, we had received, lots of letters and lots of emails from fans saying, you've got to make 6-shooter, you got to make Blade, or find someone to do it, or we'd love to buy this, we'd love to buy that. So we took the first two of the first 6 puppets, Blade and 6-shooter, and designed them here and came up with the prototypes and designed the packaging and caused the toys to be manufactured in mainland China, which is where all action figures essentially are manufactured. This was, I think, 4.5 years ago, and it was a big success for us. Again, we didn't sell millions, but we sold a few 100,000 units, which was much more than just a little thing out of your back room. And that began a relatively successful run of, I don't know how many we did wind, maybe 90, 85 or 90 different characters, and sometimes the same character with different finishes and different colors and different sizes, because then we got into the 12-inch characters. Yeah, we've probably, over the last 4 years, we've probably manufactured maybe 2 million action figures, something like that.
Charlie, of all your films, which one are you most proud of?
There's about 10 movies that I'm proud of out of all these. I'm proud of the whole lot because they're all, I think, pretty decent films. But since I've directed a handful, the few that I've enjoyed directing, other than Trancers, which we've spoken about, I'm just trying to think of a few that come to mind. I made a kids movie called Prehysteria, which did very, very well, and sort of started a whole rash of Disney-esque films in this genre. I did a picture which literally started in the way you're describing. I was up one night and I wanted to do something really strange and different. Not that any of these are not strange and different, but something like really outrageous. And again, using a template of films like From Beyond and Dolls and some of the other kind of weird sort of black humor horror films that I've been involved with over the years. And there was an opportunity to use a particular location. I was thinking about directing, so all this came together in a rush of madness. And I was thinking, how could I put 4 or 5 really weird characters together without doing the same old story, And I was trying to figure out. I first started to figure out who these people were. And I had some ideas. Ultimately, the writer who I hired fleshed a lot of the characters out. But my concept was to build a movie around a title that I had had for a while called The Head of the Family. And it doesn't sound on its surface like a horror film until I figured out, well, maybe the head can be just a big head, in a wheelchair with maybe small little arms as appendages. And then I thought, well, it'd be clever if the head was literally the head of the family, the one with all the brains, therefore the big head, and his progeny or offspring. We eventually tied it into a genetic thing, were sort of his brawn, And so we had the buxom, beautiful chick who was completely brainless, and we had a guy who, who had huge eyes, he could see and hear, but the large amount of the brains of the family was, of course, in the head of the family. So he controlled these characters, and I really like that movie, even though it's probably one of the weirdest movies I've made, just because it's so outrageous, it's so fun to watch. I get occasionally letters from people who are fans of Head of the Family. It was made, I think I shot it in 8 days, so it was shot very quickly. And I think it'll stand the test of time. It's one of those movies someone will look at it 100 years and go, wow, that was like a clever, weird little, who thought of that bizarre project. Now, it wasn't the most successful film we've ever done. It did okay.
How do you advise someone who wants to be a producer?
If in the traditional role of producing, you are finding material that's not yours, you're packaging elements, you're finding the money, and you want to obviously do well, make a good movie, and be able to make your investors happy because they want a return on their dollars. And if you're in a genre that's a commercial genre, so I can talk about that, you hopefully recognize talent. You have to be able to choose wisely, and embark on a project that is commercially viable. On that front, you need to talk to people, and it's not easy if you're an unknown or not a known quantity. But I mean, if it's a small, film, and you want to make sure that it can go out on video, you need to try to talk to retailers or talk to buyers at smaller chains and just make sure you're making something that hasn't already been made, 3 years ago, or something very close that hasn't been made. And it's kind of the obvious. You need to ask questions and just kind of sift out what, makes sense for your project. Then once you've sort of gotten an idea and you've talked to knowledgeable people about, let's say the money side of it. Okay, what does U.S. home video mean? What is the dollar range? What does foreign mean? And you sort of add it all up and say, okay, well, now I know that if I'm going to see $500,000 on the safe side for a genre film, I can't spend $1 million. I better spend a little less if I'm going to have a chance of making some money. And then you have to see if your project, the one that you've been championing, is doable, for that price, or you invent something else that can be made within that, your budget, And I think that, you should be, because everything goes wrong. So I would say that if you're looking at a possible revenue stream of, say, $500,000, you better try to make your picture for half of that, because your picture, if it's your first film especially, will invariably cost more, and you will not see $500,000. So, hopefully you'll still, at the end of the day, make a modest profit and have money to make your next movie. So, I guess the short answer to almost everything involved in the sort of the creation and marketing of movies is you just have to get out and do it. I mean, we're in an era today where for very little money you can actually make a movie. You just find the money, borrow the money, steal the money, get the gear, and just jump into it. I mean, you can only read so much and listen to so much. There are some obvious things to avoid, but you just got to jump in feet first.
Looking back over your colorful career, are you satisfied so far with what you've accomplished?
No. No, I wish and I hope that the next sort of chapter, more time can be devoted to the creative side and less time to the business side. Again, there have been pockets of creativity, but in the last 5-6 years, especially the last year, it's such a tough business that I just spend too much time dealing with the business and surviving, and not spending time creating. And I think the work reflects that too. I think if at some point someone goes, okay, he's done this thing for 40 years, he's made 500 movies, let's kind of look, and they'll say, well, whoa, there was like kind of a stretch of films that were kind of weird, and I think that the less attention I pay to the creative side, which sometimes I have no time at the end of the day to do the creative thing, I'm just trying to man the engines here. I think the pictures to some degree suffer, or they veer away from kind of the movies I'd like to make. So my regret and my summary is, I know I've made a lot of movies, and I can stop now, and people will certainly say, wow, the guy made a bunch of movies. Yeah, I'm proud of some of them, for sure. But I'd like to actually be able to enjoy the process a little more, and that comes with the financial side not being so grueling.
Join me here again on the wild side of the imagination, where a sense of wonder and a feeling of terror can often intersect. You'll find us waiting here, the dark dreamers